Alright, so to start this off, I am not an ARPG expert. You know, I probably have like 5 hours in Diablo 3 and actually 0 in PoE. Until Lost Ark, I never thought I would like any ARPG from the experiences I've had in the past. I played the Lost Ark beta and I did not like it that much. I thought, maybe I'll try it when it comes out, maybe I won't. But a friend gifted me Platinum, so I decided to give it the real shot. And also the PSO2 NGS update didn't do me any favors in trying to keep me into the game because, oh man, that's a whole nother topic, but that went south real quick. Yeah, if you've seen the rest of my channel, you know where this goes. I got really hardcore into Lost Ark, and I still am. And that's why I wanted to try Diablo again with Diablo 4. If the ARPG genre just is something that's really grown on me over time, or if it's just Lost Ark. This part was, you know, it came out the same week as an artist, and I am raising one, so that was a little bit of a time conflict. But still, I got the time to play it, and I got the cap. Unfortunately, I didn't get to experience the world boss, but anyways, I just kind of wanted to talk about my first impression with the game and how I feel about it, as someone who's pretty much just plays Lost Ark when it comes to the ARPG genre. I should also note that I was never like, Diablo 4 hype, Diablo 4 hype. I never did too much research or looking into this game. In fact, playing it was kind of a whim. So I went into this beta with very minimal prep, very minimal knowledge. I watched Canon's video about the classes, and that was really about it for me doing post-play research. Now, I'm not really going to talk too much about technical problems or anything like that, because again, this is a beta, this is the early build of it, and bugs and crashes and disconnects and all that kind of stuff. It's bound to happen in this level of the game. Yes, I did have a few of those, but overall, the performance was pretty good. Yes, there was stuttering out in the world, but beyond that, the gameplay was pretty smooth. And I guess I am generally more forgiving on these things and more understanding about things with developers and publishers in general, because I've actually spent about 7 years in publishing. Character customization was pretty simple, pretty standard, nothing too extravagant to it, but again, this is not the game where you really look at your character, so it didn't really matter. I don't even know what my character looks like half the time, but the transmog system was pretty neat. Pretty simple. I could be crazy, and I think it maybe changed the color of some of my armors when I put them together, but I don't know. It wasn't something I was really too concerned about with the beta. I really don't have to say much about the story. I mean, it's there. I didn't find it like offensively bad or just wonderful or anything like that. It's just kind of there. But I will say it was nice to have full-out voice acting for all the scenes and even having your character speak, which is something I'm not used to having in games, so it was nice to kind of have that. The world itself was pretty nice. It was nice having your open map and having there not being really any loading unless you're entering a dungeon, or I guess they call them cellars. Which, on the topic of dungeons, let's talk about them for a moment. They kind of suck. Now, this could just be a ARPG design for most games where it is like this, and I'm just the outsider because I don't play these kind of games to really know what's standard or not. But they were very, very similar, very samey. Like, I just felt like I was doing the same thing over and over. It was like, always do these just boring tasks of like destroying idols or gathering something and placing them at altars or anything like that to unlock the bosses. And on top of that, you fought the same boss many times over, which was overall not a really great or fun experience, but, and again, there are a ton of dungeons in this game. There's a lot of them, so I guess it's more of a quantity over quality kind of thing as opposed to what I'm used to, which is, you know, an MMO design. So I guess that's kind of on me to expect more like a World of Warcraft dungeon or a Lost Ark dungeon to it, I think. But again, I could just be wrong and I just don't understand ARPGs, or at least the standard. But you know, this is the beta, this is the first act, so hopefully in the other acts they have other I guess, objectives and ways to do dungeons, other dungeon types or anything like that to make it more interesting. Now the overall look, the presentation, just graphic-wise like that, I think it all hit where they probably intended to. It looks nice, dark, and gritty. That, again, coming from a Lost Ark player, the whole first area is just like extended Shoeshire. I did enjoy the lack of loading screens in the open world. I do think maybe, though, that is probably part of the problem with the stuttering, is because of it's trying to load in the areas around you as you move around. I don't know for sure if that's the reason why it's stuttering or not. I heard the performance is better actually on console than PC. I did play on PC though. So the class I wanted to play most is Necromancer. Unfortunately, that is not available in this beta, so I had to settle for what was the second most appealing class to me, which is going to be Barbarian. My opinion on the class is pretty mixed right now. I don't think I really got the results I was looking for out of it as far as damage and performance goes. I'm willing to accept that I probably didn't build everything right, but I definitely did give every skill a shot and try them out and see what fit for me and how I wanted to play the class. Now, I think what interests me about Barbarian the most is something that I never got to make shine because I didn't farm out a bunch of gear. That is the whole arsenal system, which is they get one blunt two-hand, they get one sharp two-hand, and they get two one-handers. You can assign those weapons, those different types, to your different skills. And I think that's sick, and I think that has a lot of potential in the future, because you can get different legendary effects, or whatever you want to call them, on different weapons for the different skills. So I think that has a lot of creativity potential, which even at this point post-beta, I'm like, well, maybe, you know, down the future, maybe I still want to try a Barbarian to see what I can do with that, because that just sounds like a fun path and a fun route to go. If you're not hardcore grinding the beta, it's just going to be every skill has your highest damage weapon. That's really it. Yeah, I think the Barbarian class is pretty neat, but I think out of all classes, it might need the most time to really get to that point where it feels really good and performs really well because of the arsenal system, because you need that many more weapons to make it shine. But overall, I don't think Barbarian's really for me. And the more I dealt with the bosses especially, made me really double down on the sense that I was right in wanting to play a range class. I wanted to play Necromancer, because you do have to move around a lot in combat, because there's going to be a lot of bosses that run away from you. It's a common thing, and yes, you do have gap closer things, but it's just not as fun or as comfortable, I would say, as just being a range class. Like, because of the moving around and having to gap close so much, I picked the left click skill that I didn't feel like that was that great damage or anything wise, but it had an instant cap closer on and just lunged me forward every time I attacked. Now, I did play a lot of this beta with a couple friends, and they were wizard enjoyers. Let me tell you, that didn't do too good for Barbarian Ego. With that multiplayer scaling hits, you know, I was doing chip damage and they were still just chunking things down. But again, I'm not taking balance and all that stuff too seriously, because that's a numbers game, and those are things that actually will change from build to build to patch and all that kind of stuff. But it's not something I'm too concerned about. But yeah, Sorg was doing really good, or Wizard, whatever you want to call it in this game. It was doing good. We did have a few co-op disconnects, and we did have it where the final cutscene disconnected the clients from the host of this game, and they had to redo that final dungeon. But luckily, I was the host, so I didn't have to redo it, and I wouldn't want to as a solo barbarian compared to those two wizards. That will obviously be fixed, but, you know, just thought I'd mention it, throw it out there. And you know, that really about sums up the beta. You know, you get to level 25, you get to do a good chunk of Act 1. It might be all Act 1, I don't know. If they told me, I didn't see it. To me, this is a co-op game. This isn't something I would really enjoy playing alone. You know, maybe if I was a streamer, I would. I believe the open beta is next weekend. All the content is confirmed to be the same, besides adding Druid and Necromancer, which I will be playing it just to try out Necromancer and give that class a feel, because that is the class I wanted to try initially. Now, the Diablo 4 beta, how I felt about it is, it wasn't like the greatest thing ever, but it wasn't horrible. It was just kind of there. You know, I didn't just jump out of bed like, ooh, gotta go play Diablo 4. But I didn't really boot it up being like, oh man, I gotta play Diablo. I think it was a decent game and a decent experience and a good way to kind of get my feet wet with your standard ARPG format, because Lost Ark really deviated from that. But also, I guess, you know, in standard Blizzard fashion, they are deviating from that on their own, because they are adding things that are similar to Lost Ark, similar to more MMO-like things. And I know there's going to be those people like, hey man, if you really want to get into ARPGs, play PoE. There's a lot to that game, and I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like learning all that right now for a side game on top of Lost Ark. You know, PoE 2, when that comes out, you know, we'll talk about that then, but I'm just not ready for that information bloat that I have to go through to really get into PoE, and time bloat from what I hear. And that's another thing, is I don't know if ARPGs, the normal format, is for me. So to my understanding, the gameplay loop is really going through the same story mode on different difficulties. Sometimes you get modifiers and stuff like that. I guess some games have like generated dungeons and stuff like that. But usually in the story mode of most games, there's always going to be that area that you just dread doing. There's usually like some really annoying enemies or some annoying routes you got to do. And so the idea of going through story over and over and over, I don't know if that's really going to be for me. If I had to run through Lost Ark story for every alt, I definitely wouldn't have as many as I do now. And I get that like seasons and leagues or whatever they call them, they could spice things up, but I don't know. Like making a new character for every one of them and going through that, I just don't know if that's for me. So I don't know yet if I'm going to buy the full game, and if I do, I probably will just buy the standard edition. I don't really care about the extra 4 days, and I guess that just leaves us to one final question. Was it worth the double down? No.